Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you again today to talk about something that, well, not one of the things we usually talk about a lot on this channel. We normally deal with long-form political commentary, but today we're going to talk about an entertainer. You may have heard of her before, Chelsea Handler. This is important for a reason you may not be used to. It's not about comedy. It's not about the First Amendment. It's about the Fifth Amendment. It's about being black. Well, we'll explain. But first, we do want to mention, if it's the first time you've seen the channel, thank you for joining us. And every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you. We go on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, DLive. We go on all social media we can reach out to that the internet lords allow to speak with you directly, to take your tweets, your texts, and your calls about the issues that matter, because we believe in your First Amendment right, and we want to hear your voice. So we look forward to seeing you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time from anywhere in the world. But to the issue today, and that is Chelsea Handler. Now, as we mentioned, she is an entertainer, a comedian. She's written a book, and she's also the determiner. She decides who is black in America and who is not, and she uses her sex to sell votes. These are facts. We've covered that before back in October of 2020. But she's in the news today because she has decided that she is also not only the one who decides blackness, not only is she there to change votes by using her body, but in fact, she's also here to decide whether or not the Fifth Amendment applies, who it applies to, and what should be done about it. As you can see directly here, this is her tweet on Twitter from March 30th, and she says, quote, "So pathetic that there is a trial to prove that Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd when there is video of him doing so." Well, that's a very interesting statement. And regardless of your personal thoughts on the George Floyd killing, whether he died because of the fentanyl overdose that he was undergoing, or whether it was because of the 9 minutes that former officer Derek Chauvin had his knee on George Floyd's neck, that's not really the question that we're having here. That's why there's actually a trial going on to determine what actually happened, because video isn't always exactly true. But let's put this into context. We have Chelsea Handler, and again, to clarify, we're not making these claims because of just nonsense. She got on the program, one of the nightly news networks, and she in fact said that she was deciding who was black and who was not in reference to 50 Cent and his desire at the time in October 2020 to vote for Donald Trump. She further said in that interview that she was more than willing to possibly use her body to change his vote. That's kind of sad. In fact, here it is on screen, as you can see, as we were covering it on October 25th, where she says she had to remind a black man that he was black. She had to determine his blackness. He's a black person, and he can't vote for Donald Trump because, well, she gets to decide. She's the person who makes that choice. And it's kind of sad because she goes on in that conversation to say a few other things. So when we say that Chelsea Handler is somewhat racist in her comments and very free about what she determines is and isn't racist, we go by her own words. But again, going back to the Fifth Amendment and what she said in reference to that, we want to be very clear. So the Fifth Amendment itself says that no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against themselves, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. There's a lot in that. But the key thing that we're looking at here at the moment happens to be nor deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. According to the legal scholar Chelsea Handler, we don't need that. We have video. Why else do we need to have anything? That answers every question that could possibly be asked. But that's not exactly correct. As Gad Saad, or Sayad, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing the professor's name, who's a professor of evolutionary behavioral science and an author, states that he believes that Eichmann, the German genocidal murderer, was smuggled out of Argentina by the Mossad to stand trial in Israel. That's because of the Deontological first principles should never be violated. Oh, by the way, I'm Jewish. Your stupidity is a crime against humanity, something he stated and retweeted to Chelsea Handler. Now, if you're like me, you had to look up, what is deontological ethics? What is he talking about there? Well, very simply stated, it is that just because something seems right or wrong, you still have to go through the rule of law to determine if it is right or wrong. Very simple. And that's why there were those Germans from 1940s who committed crimes against humanity were able to be judged because laws matter. Whether or not there was a video at the time, laws matter. Because people have a Fifth Amendment right to not be deprived of their life, liberty, or property, or their due process to the legal system just because someone has a video clip which may be 30 seconds out of context, or it may be incomplete, or it doesn't have all the details. And this works for and against everyone in the legal system. But yet, Chelsea Handler, who happens to be a comedian, believes that she knows more about the law than the American justice system and the American people. It may also be why there's only 5,600 retweets of her article, of her comment, but over 40,000 people decided that they needed to stand behind what she had to say. And one of the people who happened to agree with her happens to be a Twitter individual, Soylent John, who says, bingo, I listen to Vox and I watch enough CNN to know right from wrong, and I know what I saw. We should do away with the attempt at the rule of law altogether. I wish more people would read the New York Times. It's all so simple. Why can't everyone else get this? Well, to answer Soylent John, perhaps because there are laws, because everyone has a right to due process, the Fifth Amendment. Possibly because a video doesn't tell you everything you need to know. Possibly because the New York Times, biased or not, isn't the only arbiter of law or what is right and wrong. They don't get to decide morality for 330 million people. And by the way, Soylent John, you're advocating for mob rule. You're advocating for people to go through, to just gather up a bunch of people and burn people at stakes or hang them from nooses. This isn't America. This isn't even what you're suggesting is not even moral. It is the worst kind of law and legal system you could possibly have. And how many people, indigenous peoples, black people, people of color, people who are white throughout the world and throughout time have been wrongfully punished and killed because of that kind of mentality, the mentality that is being advocated for by Chelsea Handler that we see in her comment. This is dangerous. And please, let's remember, because Soylent John did not, that there are reasons why video isn't the only rule. Remember the fact check on the drunk Nancy Pelosi videos? There were obviously found to be manipulated, as reported by Reuters. You may not remember that. That was back on, I believe it was July 29th of 2020 that they were circulating, but it was video. And the eyes do not lie. You would have seen it maybe on Vox, CNN. You may have seen it on a lot of different sources. That didn't mean it's true. It didn't mean it's correct. It does mean that she still has due process. It does mean that more needs to be done to understand the context. And when we talk about the New York Times, who don't want you to see all of the things they've done, kind of like when the New York Times had their reporter who routinely faked articles, as reported by CNN on May 11th of 2003, which sadly is not the only time this has happened. News media isn't necessarily perfect or right. Do you remember the Hunter Biden scandal? Social media, news media denounced it, said it was not true, said it was a lie, and 2 months later came out and reported that it did exist, that it was in fact a truth, and that there was a problem that was ongoing. We can go through many cases of this. How many reporters in the New York Times have been fired for plagiarism, have been fired because they were working for foreign governments at the same time that they were writing in the New York Times? We can say this with CNN and their fake stories that they have published and had to retract. So we can say this about almost all of the major news media. Scandals that have happened where they have faked news, they have reported false news. How about the Atlantic, who cited unnamed sources that did not exist when they were attacking President Trump at the time? How about the more recent news of the uncited incidents? There's so many examples that we can look to. There are problems in our media. They are not perfect. But we see that there are individuals out there who are saying, no, if it's on the left-wing media, it must be true. And it must be exactly as they say, even though reality says, and has proven often, that's not the case. But truly, I am most troubled by the fact that it's Chelsea Handler in her ignorance of the Fifth Amendment, her ignorance of law and due process, that she is encouraging individuals, regular Americans, not blue checks, just regular Americans who are out there saying that they would advocate for mob rule, to punish people just because of hearsay, and that this could take someone's life. This is dangerous. This is beyond irresponsible. Chelsea Handler should be held accountable for what she said and to retract what she has said. And she should be denounced and rejected by the Democrats, the progressives that laud her statements and are out there instigating racial violence. This doesn't help anyone. This doesn't get justice for George Floyd or any other person of color. This doesn't help America become a better, more fair place. Yes, most people should never get their information from a comedian. She's not someone I would want to trust my politics in the hands of. She knows what is black. She knows who should be elected. She is willing to use her body as a currency for votes. She is less than laudable, in my opinion. But perhaps you think I'm wrong. Maybe you think that we don't need laws. We just need mob rule. That the Fifth Amendment only applies to certain people at certain times, and it should be decided by people like this comedian. I'd like to hear that argument. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Please leave your comments below. If you have found this to be interesting, if you've liked it, please do like and share. But most of all, please do subscribe so that you can be part of this expression of the First Amendment, of our free speech. And join us every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to add your thoughts to the conversation, because we believe in that free speech.